Howdy, Jacob here. Today we're looking at EZCorp in the consumer finance industry, $664 million company, $718 million enterprise value. I do like to look at insider ownership for small businesses, and we see about 4.1%. For these small businesses, I like it to be under 10, but again, nothing by itself is a measure of its entirety of the business. And so 4% being a little bit less than what I want can still be a great investment. That just means that there's not as much investment by the management board, CEO, CFO into the business than I would, again, originally prefer with such a small business. But zero point 0.8 price to book, 8 price to earnings looks cheap from initial metrics. Growth in revenue is okay. Pretty cyclical, though. We do see as much as a 11% decline in revenue and as much as a 21% increase, but the last 3 years have been very good for the business. Gross margin is up a little bit. Operating margin still hasn't eclipsed double digit yet, but is increasing and is almost at that 10% range, with return on invested capital still looking abysmal. We can see from their income statement that they have no R&D. Majority of their costs are coming from cost of goods sold and then this other operating expense. So if it looks like an obvious price based on initial financials, we'll do a deeper dive and see what those other operating expenses really are. The balance sheet shows 171 million cash and cash equivalents with 103 short-term debt, 224 million long-term debt. So let's say that 224 million is not a whole lot in relation to their free cash flow, probably less than 3 years or so. So not terribly concerned with that balance sheet. They have the cash on hand to wipe away the short-term debt, still leaving some cash left over. And then it's about not even 3 years to pay off that long-term debt. So not terribly concerned by it. We do see an increase in cost from operations as well as their CapEx with their use of cash, paying down some debt, making some investments. I mean, that's going to be their biggest thing. They've made a good amount of investments, and then a little bit to acquisitions as well. So reinvesting is going to be a lot of their capital allocation, and then a little bit to acquisitions, a little bit to share purchases, and a little bit to debt reduction. So that gets me to get ready to make my own assumptions here from a revenue growth standpoint with how much they're reinvesting. They provide pawn services in the U.S. and Latin America. Your U.S. pawn, Latin America pawn, other investments, segments, pawn loans collateralized by tangible personal property. Okay, interesting. So not necessarily the sexiest business, but I do think that if you have great management behind you, you can really make any business run. It's just whether you'd want to own a business such as this. For me, based on initial assumptions, I think 5% seems pretty reasonable. I'm going to go a little bit lower than market average P price free cash flow based on the type of business it is. For margins, I feel pretty good about 4 and 5. Maybe think that's a little low, but based on my review, that's what I'm comfortable going with. And a share change would 1% for them would be about 7 million. 17 million to offset their stock-based compensation seems like a reasonable amount. That's maybe 20% of free cash flow. So I'm fine with that. And that gets us to our assumption that what we think the price should be worth based on these 15% discount rate and these revenue margin terminal values assumptions. And we're saying it needs to fall 45% to get to a return we're looking for here. So not quite there yet. Interesting business. It looks cheap from initial metrics, but that's why you have to do your own calculation that makes sense for you. And for me, doing a present value of free cash flow and earnings based on capital allocation available from the business makes the most sense for me. And right now, it's not obviously cheap enough to do a deeper dive, but still an interesting business. And when it gets there to a more attractive price, I will work on doing a deeper dive. Hope you enjoy this video and have a great rest of your day.